The pre-existing game it's the same game, but yeah, essentially we're putting a start card in the center. I'm gonna play my house. The start card is essentially the author or centerpiece of the whole fan fiction. Twilight Sparkle is Equestria's most prolific and horrific fanfic author. She ships herself, her friends, and her family together regardless of relation, orientation, or harmonious mane and coat color combination. In order to help fulfill Twilight's dream of writing the perfect fanfic, you take turns expanding the shipping grid, joining new ponies with ship cards. If you are first to make one of Twilight's narrative goals a reality, you earn the points for that goal. Of course, you also earn the shame of enabling Twilight's horrible penchant of shipping her friends, but nobody's perfect.
Thank you.
Goals that we want to achieve on the shipping grid, which in this case we start off with fulfilling the prophecy. We ship any Sonichu with the prime keyword with Chris Chan or Christine Chan. We get 3 unicorn ships on the unicorn on unicorn ships. So that's, they're my daddy.
What kind of animal?
He's a Sonichu. Then each player gets 4 ponies and 3 ships. That's their starting hand. Each player plays at least 1 card from your hand at the end of the turn. All pony cards closely shipped, as in, attached with the ship card. You can add a keyword. They cannot be swapped either or moved from the grid by card is attached to. And all pony cards shipped with that one cannot be discarded from the grid. Everybody needs BCB cards. PlayStation. I told you it gets crazy.
Yeah.
Using his Sonichu character, which he created in high school, Chris began to expand his fictional world, added new characters, and got to work making a comic to tell their stories. And in March of 2005, Sonichu number 0 was released onto Chris's website, with the now iconic cover of Christian telling his creation to go out and zap to the extreme. It also boasted that the publication was hand-drawn, a fact that Chris clearly took great pride in. This is because while most webcomics are drawn digitally using a tablet, Chris did not have access to that sort of equipment, forcing him to draw on printer paper with pencils and markers. The art in Sonichu was crude and amateurish, which of course became one of its most defining features over time. On top of that, there were frequent spelling and grammatical errors, another staple of his work. Sonichu did not tell one story per issue. Instead, each installment was broken up into several smaller tales, referred to as episodes. Episode 1, titled Sonichu's Origin, explained how the titular character came to be. As the story went, while fighting the monster Perfect Chaos, Sonic the Hedgehog collided with a nearby Pikachu that was watching the battle, transforming it into Sonichu. Meanwhile, a beam of rainbow energy hit a Raichu 15 miles away, causing it to evolve into a new form. The Raichu's trainer, a girl named Kel, stated that her Pokemon looked as beautiful as a rose, leading her to choose the name Rosechu. This episode was one of the earliest examples of Chris's poor understanding of copyright law. Despite him having created the Sonichu character to claim parody, he still tied his backstory in with intellectual property that he did not own. However, this did not stop Chris from putting his own copyright notice on the comic. At the end of episode 1, Chris took readers on a small tour through his fictional town of Quickville, of which he was the mayor, and introduced them to the cast of characters they would be meeting in future issues. At the very end of this section, Chris introduced himself, where he included the uniquely Chris Chan line, "I am also single, lonely, and I need a girlfriend." Episode 2 was an adaptation of Chris's old story, Genesis of the Lovehogs, telling the tale of Sonichu and Rosechu meeting each other and falling in love. Episode 3 was titled Sonichu vs. Natesirk, and introduced a new villain for the story, which is Christian's name spelled backwards. He was the son of Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket from Pokemon. Chris portrayed Natesirk as being what he felt was the complete opposite of himself, evil and flamboyantly gay. The epilogue of this first issue shows Chris lamenting over the continued failure of his love quest, and driving back to the Fashion Square Mall to continue his search for a sweetheart. Strangely, in this encounter, Sonic Chu referred to Chris as his father. Chris also provided the readers with a few short Sonic Chu strips he had drawn before beginning work on the comic proper. These really didn't amount to anything important, but they are notable for being the first appearance of a new villain known as Mary Lee Walsh, who you might remember as the Dean of Student Affairs at Piedmont, Virginia Community College. The fictional Mary Lee Walsh's goal was to keep Chris from completing his love quest, mirroring how her real-life counterpart repeatedly forbade Chris from carrying his attraction sign around the campus, portraying her with a pitchfork and devil horns and ending the comic by obliterating her with his Kamehameha attack. As you can probably already tell, Chris often incorporated his real-life struggles into his work. Another example being Jerk Cop-tastrophe, which involved him hanging around the mall, listening to music on his Nintendo DS, and expressing his frustration over the fact that all the women he wanted to date were already in relationships. As he pondered his unfortunate reality, Chris was approached by a jerk-op who berated him for his loneliness. This security guard then brought in reinforcement to handcuff him, but our hero was able to escape by transforming into his new form known as Chris Chan Sonic Chu, using his famous medallion. This appears to be the first ever use of his now famous moniker, Chris Chan. As Mr. Chandler began writing his comic, so too did he continue his love quest at the Fashion Square Mall, now under the supervision of his parents following prior confrontations with the jerk-ops. He would spend hours pacing around carrying his attraction sign, hoping a girl would approach him. Eventually, Chris did attract the attention of women, though probably not the kind of attention he was hoping for. The first of these ladies was a 19-year-old named Anna McLaren, who detailed her experience with Chris in a blog post titled "The Tale of the Crazy Pacer." According to her, she would often see a 20-some-year-old autistic man making his rounds while she was at work, and he would occasionally glance through the window of the store to look at her along with fellow female employees. On a dare, Anna began to wave at Chris as he walked by, which quickly escalated when he entered the store to talk to her. He attempted to flirt, and she responded as politely as she could before the conversation ended with Chris giving Anna his email address. Despite the circumstances of how they met, the teenager would go on to become one of Chris's longest-running real-life acquaintances after this encounter. The second of Chris's love quest triumphs was a young woman named Hannah in March of 2005. While he was taking a break from his search for a boyfriend-free girl, she reportedly approached Chris and asked him out on a date. This made the autistic man ecstatic, believing that his years of carrying an attraction sign had finally paid off. Of course, he had to tell everybody he knew about this exciting development, and that included his new friend Anna McLaren. However, she knew something Chris didn't. Hannah had no intention of dating him and had merely asked him out as a prank. Chris was shocked by this revelation and immediately went to confirm it with Hannah. Upon admitting to what she had done, Chris was devastated and loudly yelled, "No!" in the middle of the mall. This disturbance earned Chris yet another temporary ban. These events were retold in his Sonic Chu comic, The Rise and Fall of My Heart. In this version, Anna's role was replaced by Rose Chu, and perhaps more notably, Chris's emotional state was visually portrayed by a heart level. It begins with him at 20%, but when Hannah asks him out, it skyrockets all the way up to 100%. However, when her cruel trick is revealed, it plummets back down to 15%. Throughout many Sonic Chu issues, Chris had drawn ads to replicate the look of a real publication. The most notable of these was the ad for Axe body spray in Sonic Chu number 2. He made no secret about his love for the product, likely buying into its ad campaign that showed its wearers being irresistible to women. Chris states that Axe makes him feel quote-unquote scently delicious and confident. However, the main concern is found in Sonic Chu and Rose Chu's conversation near the bottom of the page, which seems to imply that Chris believes wearing Axe is a suitable replacement for bathing. It also includes Rosechou asking the baffling question, "May I orbit your belt?" As the Sonic Chew comics continued, Chris introduced his childhood friend Sarah Hammer as a character, as well as her boyfriend at the time, Wes Isley. In the story, the three of them are all given the ability to transform into hedgehog versions of themselves. Chris makes no secret about his jealousy towards Wes, writing him as a villainous character, and another one of his many personal rivals. He dedicates an entire page to a discussion between the two, in which Chris talks about how jealous he felt during an incident in which he saw Sarah sitting on Wes's lap. In this confrontation, Chris portrays himself as very honest and mature, while Wes comes across as cruel and selfish. As you've probably been able to figure out at this point, these episodes were Chris's main way of coping with his problems. Rather than try to learn from his mistakes, he would instead take no personal responsibility, and create his own reality in which he was the victim, and the world was out to get him. Because of this, similar situations of Chris having run-ins with others such as law enforcement would happen over and over, with him seemingly learning nothing each time. However, this eventually came to an end around mid-2005, when Chris's mother Barbara told him to stop adding these personal details to his comics, since she wasn't fond of the idea that their personal life would be shared on the internet. Chris agreed, and decided to officially end the autobiographical subsections with Sonic Chew No. 4 in September, a compilation of all the previous personal sections of his work, as well as a few new ones. Funnily enough, Sonic Chew No. 4 was released almost 6 months before Sonic Chew No. 3. The first of this final batch of real-life reenactments was the two-part story McAttack, in which Chris had been kicked out of a McDonald's for loitering, allegedly once again trying to do his old attraction sign trick. In true Chris Chan fashion, this retelling portrays the managers as aggressors while Chris is simply an innocent victim. By most angles, McAttack is fairly standard as far as early Sonic Chew goes. However, there is one element that makes it stand out. About halfway through the story, Chris summons his twin sister Crystal to help him in the battle. Of all the bizarre creations that were spawned in the Sonic Chew universe, Crystal ranks amongst the strangest, and her inclusion in the story confused many. You see, most of his characters have a real-life counterpart, but Chris didn't have a sister. Many theorize that Crystal represented a female version of Chris, since in McAttack, Crystal stands up to the managerks who are harassing him. Sonic Chew No. 4 concludes with the story of Off Target. This was Chris's dramatic retelling of a real-life incident that happened in July, in which he was once again confronted by jerk-ops while carrying around his attraction sign, but this time in Target. Unlike most of the other events of this nature, things quickly escalated to the point of the police being called. Chris ended up getting arrested and charged with disorderly conduct and trespassing, although these charges were dropped after 2 court hearings. Nonetheless, this event obviously traumatized the entire Chandler family. Despite his mother's wishes, Chris continued to write about his real life frequently in his comics, though just not as on the nose as before. Sonic Chew No. 5 focused once again on Chris and his never-ending love quest, containing the story of the recent wedding of Sarah Hammer to a man named William Spicer. While it's laid out in rather confusing terms, the dialogue in this episode states that Chris is only attending the wedding in spirit, implying that he was not invited. However, an image does exist of Chris and Sarah posing with her wearing a veil, seemingly meaning that, even if he was not at the wedding, he saw her shortly before or afterward. While obviously nothing can be said for certain, Chris seems happy for Sarah in the picture, and that is reflected in the comic. The story is actually fairly mature by Chris's standards, as he lets go of his crush and accepts that they will not end up together. Upon this issue's release, it seems that Christian was actually making progress, although that may be due to the fact he had his sights set on a new potential sweetheart. As one door closed, another seemed to be opening, as the comic ends with Chris catching the bouquet as Sarah throws it, traditionally meaning he will be the next to get married. Coincidentally, in this story, Chris also introduced a new character, Sailor Megatoon. And in the very beginning of the comic, he credits her creation to his friend, Megan Schroeder.
Hello Hello, my name is Christian Weston Chandler of Ruckersville, Virginia. What would you do for a PS3? What I would do for a PS3? I tell you what I do. Well, if I had the money, I'd wait in line, like all the other people did with their tents and all that good stuff. I'd throw away the cure for autism if I had it.
As briefly mentioned in the previous episode, Chris met a woman named Megan a few years prior at the game place, but he appeared to have recently been making efforts to grow their friendship into something more. Since the young woman was a fan of Sailor Moon and My Little Pony, Chris decided to get into those franchises as well. For this brief moment in time, it seemed like Chris was actually evolving as a person, accepting that his previous crush had moved on, and began taking a genuine interest in his new potential sweetheart's hobbies. But unfortunately, this would not last. The 20-some-year-old man went overboard and started spending copious amounts of money on toys and merchandise for Megan's favorite IPs. Unrelated, he also began buying adult DVDs and toys, including a blow-up doll. It's important to keep in mind that at this point, Chris was unemployed, with his only source of income coming from monthly social security payments. During this time, Megan was fully aware of Chris's interest in her. He would reportedly often try to touch her without consent, a problem she would bring up in an email to Chris.
One more thing. Please minimize your touchiness. You know well I dislike it, and I keep reminding you. Understand, I'm not angry, but annoyed and a bit disappointed. I remember you said you'd never do it again, and yet, I know you're just being friendly and all, but I really hate being touched. By anyone.
The young lady was clearly trying to nip this crush in the bud, but Christopher would not listen. This would of course eventually blow up in his face. But Chris had a few more heartbreaks to go through before that happened. On June 27th, 2006, Chris's beloved dog Patty tragically passed away. She was quite old, as the canine had joined the Chandler family all the way back in 1992, and her worsening health problems made them finally decide it was time to put her out of her misery. In Chris's eulogy for his pet, he stated that he was the one who signed the paper authorizing the vet to put Patty to sleep, in order to spare his mother the burden.
I raised Patty since she was a 6-week-old pup, and I wanted to take the strain for signing the one-way ticket. It was hard for me, but it was for the best. So I signed that paper with a crying Sonichu face saying, "We love you, Patty." After that, I gave her my final pets, hug, hand to paw hold, eye contact, ear rub, cheek to fur rub, and I sadly waved her for the last time. And I said, "Goodbye, Patty. I love you."
After a small funeral, Patty Chandler was buried in the backyard, underneath the doghouse that had been her home for so many years. Chris's eulogy may have been the most heartfelt thing he had ever written. They had essentially grown up together, and an argument could have been made that Patty was the closest and most long-lasting friendship Chris ever had. In February of 2007, Sonic Chew No. 6 was released, containing the episode One Lucky Dog. It tells the story of Patty eating some magical grass and transforming into a talking anthropomorphic dog/human hybrid. Upon discovering this, Chris takes Patty into his bedroom, where he reveals that he had a portal to his fictional town of Quickville hidden within the closet. He takes his old dog through the portal and tells her she can now live in this reality for the rest of eternity. This was the first time Chris portrayed Quickville as something of a religious afterlife. On February 25th, 2007, Christian celebrated his 25th birthday at his preferred hangout, the Game Place, surrounded by his friends and family. Also at this event, he officially released a DVD he had been working on titled Yep, I'm on TV. This was a compilation of all of Chris's home movies and television appearances, as well as the photos he had taken over the years. Chris also recorded a video intended to bestow advice to younger people, based on the wisdom he'd learned in his quarter century on Earth, providing a very good point of reference for his mindset at the time.
Dad, while you're playing with these things, you should keep in mind of what your true original gender is. Because it's like you're learning about that girl you want to take on a date, young man. Or likewise, you feel more comfortable to approach that boy just saying hello that you've been checking out from a distance, young lady. And hopefully in due time or now, each and every one of you will stay straight. You know, girl for boy, boy for girl. Everything else is vice, as said by Dr. Kinsey.
Despite the fact that Chris did not intend to distribute his DVD publicly, he still wanted another outlet to share more of his creative work with the world. So in May of 2007, he created an account on the burgeoning platform of YouTube and named his channel SonicChu. His first upload to the site was a video about the game Soul Calibur. This video depicted a fight between Chris and Mary Lee Walsh, using customized characters from the game, where of course he comes out victorious. By his standards, this video was relatively harmless, but the creation of a YouTube channel would go on to become perhaps one of the greatest mistakes Chris ever made, as things would quickly spiral out of control.
Ribbit, ribbit, I cannot hold it, the last little toilet. I already sold it, ribbit, ribbit. In the rain or in the snow, I got the funky flow. But now I really gotta go. In the rain or in the snow.
In the rain or in the snow, I got the funky
Parappa the Rapper, great new music video game.
In the rain or in the snow.
Once you played it, you can't get it out of your head.
In June of 2007, Sony announced Parappa the Rapper Chop Chop Master Onion's Rap Showdown, a contest in which participants were required to recreate a song from the PlayStation franchise for a chance to win 2 PSP game systems. The only rules were that contestants were not allowed to change the lyrics or use backing tracks in their entries. Upon learning of this contest, Chris decided that he absolutely had to win. With this, the novice YouTuber began formulating a plan to give one of the PSPs to Megan, and he would then take her on the trip to PAX West, where she would surely fall in love with him. Chris quickly got to work making a video to guarantee him a win in the contest. As you may expect from Chris's usual standards though, it didn't turn out very well. First of all, the entry was filmed using his PSI, a cheap camera attachment for the PlayStation 3. Secondly, the entry is full of nonsensical and jarring effects taken from Sony's built-in editing software, most likely in an attempt to make the video look more professional. On top of all this, Chris clearly did not actually memorize the lyrics to the song, as he frequently stumbled over the words and looked off camera to read them. He also technically broke the rules by changing the lyrics, as he began the video rapping about his plan to make Megan fall in love with him. Miraculously, or more likely due to the fact that very few people entered the contest, Chris's entry made it to the final 10 and became eligible for public voting. This would be the start of an aggressive marketing campaign, as he tried to win through any means necessary. He began posting ads to his website, encouraging the readers of SonicChu to vote for him. He also started handing out flyers to patrons at the game place in order to earn more votes. In addition, Chris also began emailing all of his old acquaintances asking for help. These included old gal pals and teachers from high school, and strangest of them all, his estranged half-brother Cole Smithy, who he had not spoken to in years. Surprisingly enough, he did respond to Chris's request, agreeing to vote for him on one condition.
I'll make a deal with you. You find out the identity of my real father from Barbara and email me the person's name, and I will vote for you in your effort to travel to Seattle. Deal?
If you couldn't tell, Cole's relationship with his mother Barbara was strained. He alleges to have been the victim of severe mental and physical abuse throughout his childhood by his mom, as well as Bob and her former husband, Jerry Harmon. Cole also believed Barbara was lying to him about the identity of his biological father. She claimed his dad was a man named Jack Dale Smithy, but Cole insisted it to be a different old flame of hers, Ran Coleman Yeats. Suffice to say, Chris never followed through on asking Barbara about Cole's father. Despite all of the vigorous campaigning he had done, Christian still decided he needed to do more in order to increase his chances of victory. This competition was far too important in his mind, so he chose to turn to less than admirable tactics. This is when he began to create several email addresses in order to stuff the ballots, voting as many times as he possibly could for his entry, even making a fake account in order to leave a review for his video, in which he refers to Megan as his girlfriend.
Such honesty of his situation and devotion for his lucky girlfriend adds great emotion to his performance. The visually appealing FX added the best humor and biggest laugh I had among the bunch. I enjoyed the fun background to his assumed to be bedroom, and his informative feedback on playing Guitar Hero on PlayStation 3. Also, he has nailed the lyrics a cappella. As the brave autistic warrior so creatively put it at the end, rap, 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 that's a wrap.
After doing everything in his power to ensure victory, Chris waited anxiously for the final results of the contest to be released. On August 3rd, the self-proclaimed autistic warrior logged onto the website excitedly, only to be crushed upon realizing he had lost to a man named Adam Stackhouse. As you can probably imagine, Chris did not concede defeat gracefully. He began posting incessantly on the PlayStation message boards, and emailing Sony directly about how he should have won. He angrily pointed out Adam's use of an a cappella beat in the video, which he believed to be a violation of the contest rules regarding backing tracks. However, this ultimately amounted to nothing, as Sony ignored his emails and his tantrum resulted in a ban from the PlayStation forum. Chris also emailed Megan after his big loss, cursing Adam Stackhouse and lamenting the fact that he would not be able to take her to PAX West. This was apparently the final straw for Megan, who had been trying to tell Chris for months that he had no chance with her romantically. She sent a heated email back, berating him for ignoring her countless requests for him to stop trying to date her.
Christian, I haven't been checking my email until recently, and I just want to say that your behavior has irritated me for the last time. First, I'll start off with saying that I'm glad you didn't win the contest, because I have no interest in going on a trip alone with someone who can't keep his hands off me. I'm not your girlfriend, and I never will be. When I say, don't touch me, that means don't touch me. What may seem friendly to you is sexual harassment to me. You whine that you're just being friendly, but you obviously have no consideration for my feelings. And I don't like your Megan obsession. I don't like being a character in your comics. I don't like how you made me a character in Soul Calibur and Animal Crossing. That kind of behavior really freaks me out.
The week's events were a massive blow to Christian's ego. Not only did he lose the contest, but also the woman that he loved. At this moment, it seemed like things hit rock bottom, as the mirage of a future Chris had planned blew up in front of his eyes. But unfortunately, it would soon turn out that this was only the start of his problems. Because the thing is, these new antics on YouTube piqued the interest of an online community that would soon propel our protagonist into the spotlight.
And that is how angry I am at Adam Stackhouse, Apraluski, Rudell, and Surya Butchwald. They should have been disqualified because they had music and more than one person in their Freakazoid videos.
With Chris starting to bring his strange and self-destructive behavior onto social media sites, it was only a matter of time before people took notice, and that day arrived on October 26 of 2007. This is when photos of Chris playing the Pokemon trading card game at the game place were posted onto a little image board known as 4chan. At the same time, discussions of him began on the Something Awful forums, prompted by a user who had witnessed Chris's pursuit of true love in real life. His multiple public outbursts and unique worldview made him impossible to ignore, and he was quickly becoming a favorite topic of discussion across the web. Despite the internet's instant fascination with Chris Chan, there were some people who theorized this was all just an elaborate troll. As a result, someone decided to go right to the source and find out for themselves. On November 3rd, Chris received an email containing fan art people had made of him and his characters. Among these was a drawing of Chris sitting at a desk labeled Girlfriend Auditions, with a sign which reads, "No Darkies." He also included a few pornographic images, including a comic of Chris having a sexual encounter with Sonic Chew and a drawing of Sonic Chew pleasuring himself. It didn't take long for Chris to respond.
I am feeling great detest towards the other two. Sonic Chew and I are not of that nature at all. If you would like to make it up to me, though, please draw a strip of Rose Chew stripping for Sonic Chew. I am straight, damn it. I will not be veered in any other disgustingly grotesque direction.
The sender quickly apologized for the art and sent Chris the comic he had requested of an intimate moment between Sonic Chew and Rose Chew. The one catch was that in this picture he chose to depict Rose Chew with a penis rather than female genitalia. Chris may have been upset before, but this drove him completely over the edge.
Rose Chew is a girl. She never had a frickin' pickle. If I see one more frickin' pickle, and you may spread this quote to other adult fan artists, I will create you in Soul Calibur 3 and beat you up like there's no tomorrow.
If there was anyone who remained unconvinced as to whether Chris was legitimate, this response was what finally made the trolls realize they had struck gold. Shortly thereafter, a man named Jason Kendrick Howell created a page about Chris on Encyclopedia Dramatica, a wiki dedicated to the discussion and mockery of strange internet figures. Chris now had the kind of undivided attention that most people would do their best to avoid. He would need to choose his next moves carefully if he wanted the trolls to go away. Unfortunately, he did not do that. A few days later, Chris posted a video directed at the users of Encyclopedia Dramatica, although he quickly detoured from the original topic and began rambling to the camera about his life. He talked about his supposedly proud lineage, bringing up his Cherokee ancestors, as well as the fact that he was descended from Anne Boleyn and some travelers on the Mayflower. He also discussed his various hardships throughout life, such as his early schooling and his inability to find a girlfriend. It's unclear what Chris hoped to gain from this. Perhaps he wanted sympathy, or maybe he thought this information would make the trolls respect him. He concluded by requesting that the ED page of him be taken down, or at least edited to portray him in a more flattering light. Not only did this request not stop the deluge of trolls, but it only furthered the negative attention coming his way. People continued making fun of Christian and posting to the Encyclopedia Dramatica page, much to his frustration. Things hit a boiling point only a couple days later when an old graphic internet shock image known as Goatsy was uploaded to his wiki entry with the caption, "The true brains behind Chris Chan." This sent Chris into a fit of rage, as he went to his ED page and began editing it as he saw fit. Bizarrely, many of Chris's edits revealed a lot of embarrassing information about him that had previously been unknown to his detractors, such as the fact that he used a blow-up doll, and how he truly believed his Sonic Chew medallion gave him special powers. Chris concluded his session by uploading a number of pornographic drawings he made in an attempt to prove his heterosexuality. Most of these were just pictures of his hedgehog characters, but there were a couple particularly shocking ones that stood out from the rest. Namely, these were a naked drawing of Mary Lee Walsh and a picture of Chris pleasuring an unidentified girl while giving a thumbs up to the viewer, later named She Came for Quick. At first, many of the trolls believed the girl in the drawing to be Chris's fictional sister, Crystal, based on their similar appearance. A few jokes were made about it, and things continued like this for months. Eventually, though, someone would come along and recognize the true identity of the girl in the drawing, taking the entire situation from bad to worse. This occurred in March of 2008, when Megan discovered the She Came for Quick drawing, and was immediately horrified, recognizing the girl as herself. She immediately emailed Chris, stating her disgust with what he had drawn, and requesting that he remove all mentions of her from the internet. Chris soon responded, apparently misinterpreting what had upset her about the drawing. He seemed to believe that her shock came not from seeing such a vulgar image of herself, but instead from her lack of sexual experience. He decided to offer her some resources she could use to better educate herself, which included recommending she watch The 40-Year-Old Virgin. Despite not fully understanding what he did wrong, Chris did make some effort to honor Megan's wishes, and he began deleting everything he could about her from the ED page. The thing is, he didn't delete the original graphic artwork that started the drama, choosing instead to simply zoom in on the image so Megan's face was no longer visible. Unsurprisingly, she was not pleased with this fix, once again emailing Chris, baffled as to why he didn't just delete it. She scolded him for selfishness and tried to get him to change his mindset where he believed the world was out to get him. Once again, clearly misreading the situation, Chris's response to this only served to dig his hole deeper.
Megan, I am sorry for uploading the drawing, and I really wish I could go back in time and stop myself from making the mistake. Yet I do not regret drawing the drawing, because if I hadn't released my frustrations in this creative sense, I might actually have done something really dumb and stupid.
It's unclear what Chris meant by this, but the sinister implications were enough to cause Megan to finally cut ties entirely. This event was devastating to Chris, as he had several self-destructive outbursts over the following weeks. It started when he yet again edited the Encyclopedia Dramatica page, berating himself and stating that he was a loser. In doing this, he also accidentally publicly revealed that the girl in She Came for Quick was Megan. Chris also uploaded an image gallery called You Know What? I Hate Myself Too, filled with panels from his comic showing his character getting beaten up or humiliated. As this self-destructive streak continued, it eventually bled out from the internet into Chris's real life. Grace Baptist Church, Chris's regular congregation, discovered his online activity and quickly shunned him. He also received a 2-week suspension from the game place, although following further outbursts, it became permanent. In many people's opinion, this was the real turning point when Chris became Chris Chan. His gal pal had abandoned him, his church had rejected him, and his favorite hangout spot had banned him. In just a few short weeks, a large portion of Chris's life had been ripped away, all due to his poor behavior. The only place he could turn to for attention now was the internet, because even if they were abusive, at the very least, they would talk to him.
So the one called Jason Kendrick Howe. For he is, and I quote, in an email he sent me, the creator of the Encyclopedia Dramatica ED page for me. And he states further, my, you seem rather angry about it in your last YouTube video. A few months ago you asked me why I made the page for you. My reason? You were too damn funny to ignore.
In August of 2008, Chris released a couple more videos addressed to Encyclopedia Dramatica, in yet another ill-conceived attempt to fight back. In these uploads, Chris angrily blamed the site's contributors for ruining his relationship with Megan, saying that they broke the emotional bond between them. He once again demanded removal of the page, holding the release of Sonic Chew No. 7 in limbo until he got what he wanted. Despite his anger at the internet for driving a wedge between him and Megan, Chris seemed far more upset about the misconceptions people were spreading about his sexuality. A great deal of his time online was spent firmly establishing how much he hated seeing male genitalia, and how he preferred female genitals, which he referred to as China. He also wanted to correct the record about the identity of the girl in the now infamous illustration, insisting that the girl depicted was Megan, not Crystal. No matter how much time passed, Chris could never get over people inaccurately depicting Rose Chew's biology. In late August, Chris released an episode of the upcoming Sonic Chew number 8 early, titled Rage Against the Garbage. He created 3 separate versions of this episode, one labeled TVMA, another labeled TV14, and a third labeled TVY7. This was due to the graphically sexual nature of the story. The comic begins with Sonic Chew and Rose Chew talking directly to the audience, addressing the sexual content they are about to witness, and assuring the reader that it is being done for educational purposes, and that they are both consenting adults. This mature story starts with the aforementioned lewd acts, before being interrupted by Chris giving long-winded explanations of their anatomies, complete with diagrams. Once the scene finally ends, Rose Chew decides to go on the internet, where she discovers a website called 4cent Garbage, a stand-in for 4chan and ED. She is horrified to discover the drawing of her, and she starts to formulate a plan for how to counteract them. She first takes naked pictures of herself and posts them to the website, mirroring Chris's earlier attempt. Much like that event though, this does not work, and she and Sonic Chew travel to the 4cent Garbage headquarters in order to get them taken down. Upon their arrival, the hedgehogs take the elevator up to the top floor in order to confront the CEO. On their way, they encounter several memes that Chris presumably found on 4chan and add their commentary to them. They even take the time to attack a few 4cent Garbage employees, as Rose Chew punches someone drawing anatomically incorrect art of her. Chris himself even shows up to assault someone making fun of his drawings. When the crew finally reached the top floor, they were confronted by 4cent Garbage's CEO, Jason Kendrick Howell. Despite their plan for him to take down the drawings, Jason doesn't listen, as Chris portrays him as a soulless nihilist with no morals whatsoever. As they leave, Jason hurls a pickle at Rose Chew. This sends her into a fit of blinding rage, as she furiously strips nude and throws herself at Jason, beating him nearly to death. However, she steps away just before the killing blow, letting him live to troll another day. In the epilogue, Rose Chew gathers together all of the comic's other female characters in order to do a nude photo shoot to stand in solidarity against the trolls. It's here where Chris introduces a new character named Zapina, a 14-year-old girl who asks if she can model for the pictures. Rose Chew turns her down though, saying that quote-unquote dumb laws would prevent it. As time progressed, Chris posted more and more vlogs about his feud with Encyclopedia Dramatica, and his YouTube channel became his primary outlet for talking to the internet. Just a couple days after his initial 2 releases, he posted another vlog celebrating his victory over ED, as the website had to go down throughout the day. Chris believed that this was his doing, as he had rallied his fans to conquer his enemies. In reality, however, the website had been going down due to unprecedented levels of traffic, as more and more people began flooding in to read about Chris's antics. And as interest grew, trolls began devising new ways to mess with Chris, just to see how he would react. An early example of these more elaborate pranking attempts came a little later in August, when someone calling themselves JK Productions messaged Chris, telling him that he was working on a Sonic Chew video game. Chris, being an avid gamer, excitedly gave his seal of approval to the project. Over the following weeks, he even posted a few vlogs to his YouTube channel detailing his involvement with the game, stating that he was hard at work writing the storyline. This troll was short-lived, as on September 5th, 2008, JK Productions decided to cancel the project, posting on their blog that Nintendo and Sega had issued them a cease and desist. As one last bit of fun at Chris's expense, they pretended to redesign his character to be more copyright safe. Sonic Chew became Reginald the Anteel, with Rose Chew becoming his flamboyantly gay partner, a clear mockery at Chris Chan's homophobia. Chris himself was reimagined as a large-chested, scantily clad woman wearing a pickle necklace. Unsurprisingly, the Sonic Chew creator was not pleased, and quickly responded by cutting ties with the project, and encouraged his fans to contact Nintendo and Sega to make an official Sonic Chew game. Even though this was not the most elaborate trolling effort, it was used to test the waters for future endeavors. These unscrupulous internet users were rapidly learning Chris's weaknesses, and figuring out ways ways to exploit them for their own entertainment. Another one of these early sagas involved a group of trolls attempting to trick him into believing that English football commentator Jimmy Hill was trying to sell a ripoff of Sonic Chew in the UK. They went to great lengths to convince him of this, creating fake ads for Sonic Chew toys and putting bootleg copies of his DVD on store shelves. They later upped the ante by claiming that Jimmy Hill was developing his very own Sonic Chew animated series, in which the titular character was gay and his parents were Jimmy Hill and Mary Lee Walsh. The cartoon's villain was a giant robot, the design of which was based on Chris himself. Just as they hoped, Chris believed every word of this lie. He addressed it in multiple update vlogs, most notably one where he laid out all the evidence to prove he was the original creator of Sonic Chew and not Jimmy Hill. The trolls had a good laugh at this and did not push the Jimmy Hill saga much further. They had learned what they wanted to know, which is that there wasn't a limit to what Chris would believe, and this opened the door to many new possibilities. At around the same time period as the Jimmy Hill saga, a new group of trolls decided to prey on Chris's desire for a sweetheart by creating a fake woman for him to fall in love with. To be clear, this wasn't the first time Chris had been catfished. A few months prior, a man by the name of Joshua Martinez, who had met Chris in speech therapy class, attracted Chris's attention under the guise of the fake alias Lori Lopez. Chris and Lori talked for a while, but ultimately things fizzled out and nothing substantial came from it. With the groundwork laid, the new tricksters invented Blanca Weiss, a name obviously poking fun at Chris's desire to only date white women. In Blanca's first email to Chris, she expressed her admiration for Sonic Chew and revealed that she also enjoyed making comics. Blanca sent him her own original character, Jigglyami, a combination of the Pokemon Jigglypuff and Amy Rose from Sonic. They also sent Chris a picture of a woman jumping in the air and holding a guitar, a supposed image of the fictitious sweetheart. Chris was instantly impressed and added both Jigglyami and Blanca as characters in Sonic Chew number 7, published August 20th, 2008. This issue also included a scene of Chris being trapped in a time void, which he did in response to criticism saying that the story focused too much on him and not Sonic Chew. Chris and Blanca began emailing frequently after this, with the gullible man rapidly trying to escalate their relationship. Only a few days after their first meeting, Chris was already oversharing about his personal life and attempting to learn more about Blanca's.
Also, while I am thinking about it, I wanted to ask you about how you feel about porn in your humble opinion. Honestly, and confidentially between you and me, I see the official videos from companies such as Adam and Eve not solely as a turn-on, but as a good education of what may be done during the act. I also appreciate it more as a virgin because it allows me to create a better idea for when I actually do it for my first time. And obviously, I have seen a fair share in my adult years.
In these emails, Chris also fabricated a few details about his life, such as saying he had made up with Megan and was at peace with Encyclopedia Dramatica. The latter of these two claims was immediately disproven later in the correspondence, as he went on an angry tirade about their continued misrepresentation of Rose Chew's gender.
I just wanted to let you know that I have finally got use for the ED page being there, so I am able to tolerate its existence. The major thing about that page that really grinds my gears is all the lewd, slanderous parodied images of my Rosachew. She is all woman. She was born with and still has her God-given vagina and both ovaries.
The trolls had Chris right where they wanted him, controlling his anger with the ED page and his love life with Blanca. Soon enough though, the snafu artists behind Chris's fictional girlfriend would get a wrench thrown in their plans, when a new troll named Lord Silly Nipples created a MySpace page for Blanca without their involvement. He added Chris and quickly appealed to his well-known desperation for intimacy, asking him if he would like to exchange nudes. Unfortunately, Chris did not see through the lie, and sent multiple naked pictures of himself to the imposter of his already fake girlfriend. This led to September 11th, 2008, when Lord Silly Nipples dumped Chris's nudes onto the internet, and changed the profile picture of his Blanca MySpace page to one of a black man, wearing a pickle costume. In response, Chris posted a video addressing the nudes, sadly admitting that the woman he had believed to be his first real girlfriend had been in fact a troll. He decided this gave him free rein to claim Jigglyami as his own character, as presumably he liked her too much to write her out of the comic entirely. The original trolls behind Blanca began scrambling as they were not yet ready to give up their ruse. They managed to talk Chris into partaking in a Skype call with them, where a female troll named Nurse Iki-chan played the role of Blanca. This was enough to once again convince Chris of the character's validity, and he posted another video proclaiming that she was real after all. This would not be the last time nude images of Chris were posted online. Only a few days later, trolls managed to figure out the password to his YouTube, MySpace, Facebook, and email accounts. It was at this point that they found more photos meant for Blanca, including one of Chris wearing his mother's underwear, and another of his genitals with Sonichu drawn on them. After the loss of his first YouTube channel, Chris was forced to create a new one. Lord Silly Nipples was still not done with his shenanigans either, as later that month he emailed Sonichu's creator under the guise of Chris's high school gal pal Tiffany Robinson, asking for a copy of his Yep, I'm on TV DVD. Upon receiving it, he quickly uploaded all the contents to the internet, although it really only consisted of old home movies and family photos. Among these was a picture of Barbara taking a nap. This image inspired trolls to give her the nickname Snorlax, as they believed she resembled the Pokemon of the same name. The apparent success of these early trolling sagas began to attract the attention of more and more internet users, who were curious to see if catfishing this man really was as easy as it seemed. Throughout September, Chris began talking to several more people pretending to be women who were interested in him. The first of these girls was named Sarah Jackson, who first approached Chris by telling him that her autistic little sister, Rose, was a big fan of Sonichu. Chris did show some affection towards her, but ultimately nothing came of it. The creator of Sarah would later decide to kill her off by saying that she was hit by a truck, an event which Chris had very little of an emotional response to. In this era, there was also Jessie Ruddy, another catfish who Chris showed a bit of interest in, but never went very far with, and she would reveal herself to be a troll only about a month later, as it wasn't going anywhere. The most successful of these spiritual successors to Blanca was a spin-off account that went by the name Sarah Mackenzie, an Australian girl who used the screen name Panda Halo. She was somehow able to convince Chris to break things off with Blanca in order to build a relationship with her. On September 24th, Chris made a video announcing his new girlfriend to his fans. He didn't reveal her name, but did sing a cover of Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up for his new flame. She was able to use Chris's deep sexual urges to her advantage, often steering their conversations in risque directions. Chris, of course, was more than happy to oblige, as he would describe his masturbation habits to her in explicit detail, as well as videos of him in the act, which of course made their way onto the internet. As Chris was getting closer to his fictitious sweethearts, he began corresponding with a person named Vivian Guy. Mrs. Guy was another troll, as she had previously been responsible for a series of full narrated Sonichu audiobooks on YouTube. Despite how she had previously been making fun of him, here she seemed genuinely concerned for his well-being, as he was sucked deeper into the vortex of lies created by 4chan and ED, sending Chris multiple emails begging him to see the truth of what was going on, and to make efforts to improve his real life.
There are no fans of Sonichu. Sonichu is a bastardization of properties that belong to other people. Your entire comic is pretty much a bastardization of your life. Sonichu will never get anywhere. Quit your dreams of Sonichu, the game, the comic, merchandise, everything now. And if you still feel a need to be creative, make something completely original. Don't base it off your life, don't base it off stuff that exists, just make something completely new. You have never tried when it comes to women, never. You can't just sit around and wait for it to happen. You have to make it happen. If you can't muster up the courage to do that, then you will never get a wife, let alone a girlfriend. If you feel you can't do any of this, get a therapist, a real one. Ask your parents to send you to one. Do something about your life instead of bitch and draw comics about it.
Other than Megan, this was the hardest anyone had ever tried to show Chris the error of his ways. While harsh, it clearly and plainly laid out everything Chris needed to do to get his life back on track. Perhaps if he had followed her advice, this story would have ended here. But alas, it was too late. Chris was already caught in a tangled web of lies by the trolls. As Chris's multiple fake relationships grew more complicated, his love life would soon receive another curveball. At the end of his eventful September, he messaged Blanca over Skype, telling her about a dream he had, claiming a voice spoke to him saying the name of his true sweetheart, and that the name was Blanca Weiss. Taking it as a sign from God, Chris broke up with Sarah and returned to Blanca, declaring his undying love for her. It should be known that Chris and Sarah remained on friendly terms after their breakup, as she even created a fan site called Sonic Chew Fans later in October, which Chris would post on semi-frequently. As a symbol of his commitment to Blanca, Chris sent her a package containing his Sonic Chew medallion, as well as a handwritten letter about his love for her. The contents of this package were quickly posted on Encyclopedia Dramatica. It should have become obvious to Chris that Blanca was a troll, but he simply couldn't see the truth of the matter, as on October 9th he posted a video insisting that Blanca was legitimate, and that the package had simply been intercepted by detractors. He also claimed that Blanca had, at some point, reclaimed the package and mailed his Sonic Chew medallion back to him. He proudly showed off his prized possession, complete with the markings proving that it was the original. The trolls were not fooled, as they knew that he did not really get the medallion back, and this was merely a replica he made to save face. This video ends with a strange, out-of-place segment where Chris states that he had been sponsored by Sony, followed by a short ad for the game Little Big Planet. This section came out of nowhere and had nothing to do with the rest of the video other than showing that he was back on good terms with the gaming giant after the competition debacle. In response to the whole ordeal, Chris posted a short comic story on October 15th, 2008. This episode was a preview for Sonic Chew number 10, though bear in mind, at this point he had not even fully released Sonic Chew number 8 yet. The episode follows Chris in the form of Chris Chan's Sonic Chew, conducting a one-man assault on the 4-cent garbage building. Upon arrival, he is quickly trapped and his medallion is stolen, which reverts him back into his human form. But the trolls are shocked to learn that they gain no power from the accessory, as Chris reveals that the true source of his power is actually his high school ring. This was an obvious attempt to convince the trolls that he did not care about losing his medallion, despite the fact that just a couple days prior, he had tried to convince them that they had never stolen it in the first place. This is when one of the original trolls behind Blanca, named Icarus69, posted another video with Chris's medallion, where he destroys it in multiple different ways. These included stabbing it, making it perform coitus with a pickle, dunking it into the fermented cucumber jar, smashing it with a hammer, setting it on fire, and finally urinating on it to extinguish the flames. And with this finale, the character of Blanca Weiss had served her purpose. She broke up with Chris, which resulted in him posting a video delivering the bad news to the world. In this vlog, he seemed absolutely heartbroken, as he could not even muster the energy to stand up off the couch. He cited Icarus69's video as one of the main reasons for the breakup, stating the now iconic line, "The pickle man tricked me again." Chris went on to blame Encyclopedia Dramatica for the collapse of his relationship, angrily asking his fans to track down the person who stole his package for Blanca so he could bring them to justice. Over the course of just a couple months, Chris had experienced some of the worst that the internet had to offer. Despite being a catfish, Blanca was the closest thing he ever had to a real relationship, so the loss hurt him deeply. It was arguably the lowest point Chris had ever reached. Unfortunately for him though, the worst was yet to come.
A lot of cards.
But situationally, that's why I want to do some shipping breakups.
Are people able to bring their own decks into this game?
Yeah.
Multiple people have this
Well,
decks
mostly,
in one round?
actually, Yeah, I figured out a rule where, like, you could have two compete. You could have one deck playing against the other. That's a set of rules I came up with and add to this.
You would think that they would get mixed up too much.
Yeah. All right.
Are there any places around Charlottesville that where you can play this game with people? Like
the end games for one. If
if you can get back in there,
Yeah. All right. The Black Moon. On the Black Moon with Jacoba is some autism.
Oh, Autism Me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Never heard of that one.
that's something.
I made up that me. Just has got a weird disfigured face, but yeah.
Plays a lot of trade cards in this game.
What?
Are we allowed to trade cards?
Yeah, I do believe so, but but you don't have randomized booster packs or anything like that.
Like during a game.
Oh no.
Oh.
Okay.
So now you can actually add to that.
Yeah, I'll put a ship.
And at the point, you can also reconnect with the other start card ships.
I gotcha. I see. So I'll put a ship here.
Yep.
Facing east, and then I will place. I have this crazy card, Skylander Chris-Chan.
Oh yeah.
That works out very, very nicely.
Yes.
Because what that gives me is 2 points, which is just what I need
to win the game.
The final that I need. The final.
You made the quick play
right here, and that gives me an even 11.
Yep. Yay! Chris Co has won the game.